And specifically, the topic of conversation here is the Union effort at the Deep Cut. Everything that you learned about yesterday on the 29th, that's foreplay. You know, that's the middle of the sandwich, okay? Now we're really getting down to it, all right? This is going to be the largest Union effort of the Second Battle of Manassas, or known to them as Second Bull Run. About somewhere between 6,000 to 8,000 Union soldiers are going to be involved in what was labeled in Union dispatches a pursuit of the Confederate Army. Well, when they leave the relative safety of the trees on the opposite side of this period roadway and advance through this open field in a northwesterly orientation like we're going to be doing in the course of the tour together, they find a foe that's not fleeing or leaving at all. They're running into none other than the Stonewall Division of Stonewall Jackson's wing of Robert E. Lee's army, well ensconced within the deep cut to the unfinished railroad grade. So called because on the 2.5 miles worth of it employed by Stonewall Jackson's guys, this particular cut was found to be the deepest. Perhaps the easiest spot for them to hold or defend. Okay? We're going to be talking about the Union players involved. We're going to be talking about the Confederates that they're pushing towards, who's punching back. We're going to be again following in the footsteps of this biggest Union effort of the battle. All of these tours are meant to be time specific and place specific, but for this one, forgive us a little bit. We're cheating a little bit. All right? The massive Union push, the wave of humanity coming out of the trees, left at about 3 p.m. I know we're starting at 2. Well, that's because we got another one of these planned for you at 4 o'clock over there at New York Avenue and Chin Ridge. Events really accelerated in the course of the Second Manassas or Second Bull Run battle. Throughout the mid-afternoon of August 30th, events are happening sort of on top of each other elsewhere on the military chessboard. Okay? So bear with us a little bit. If you have questions at all, I'm going to encourage you to shuffle up alongside me as we're going in the course of the hike together. If we pause in one single spot too long, we might be here till midnight. You'll all miss out on the 4 o'clock and the 7 o'clock tours. If you're a New Yorker, this is your time on the stage. We're going to sing Frank Sinatra together, okay? Like a lot of Union Army efforts in this eastern theater of the Civil War, New Yorkers are found to predominate on the order of battle. Here it's outrageous how many of them are involved, okay? The Confederates over in the railway grade that they're pushing towards, largely Virginians. Perhaps we got a fair number of Virginians here. All right. Yes. We'll highlight some of your collateral ancestors' activities as well. All right. There's a pair of monuments for us to find as well. One is a rather unusual or unique feature on a Civil War battlefield. Most Civil War monuments are big, grandiose affairs made out of stone and bronze. What we're going to encounter is affectionately referred to as the Cedar Pole Monument. Okay, rather low-budget production by a single individual, a Union soldier who survived this effort in order to have a lengthier Army career and come back here and mark his specific spot of dirt where he lives through this biggest effort of the battle. A guy from Massachusetts who survived the walk through and back this open field said like it looked like a mill pond during a shower. Flat, placid water interrupted by raindrops, except in their case it's the small lead objects and the iron fragments that are raining down upon them as well. And believe it or not, we have sort of a special surprise for you in the course of the walk here together. This is one of the rare occasions in the whole Civil War where the Confederate big guns were able to dictate the outcome of a fight. They had a dramatic impact on the Union infantry sweeping through this open field. And on the elevations there to the west over at the Bronner Farm, not only do we have the static stationary museum piece guns, there's at least a pair and perhaps even 4 Park Service reproduction tubes that are going to boom and bark at us as we're going along. All right?
Thanks, right?
The rare chance to be down muzzle. Funny for us, not so much for the New Yorkers of 150 years ago. Okay? We're going to use a trail route along this, the period roadway. We'll pause at the shade over there. We'll get a great view shed on much of the battle area. We'll start the rest of the tale from over there. All right? Onward. Walking tour experiences here in the park. There was a healthy menu of them on the 29th, wasn't there? We sort of filled the morning today with kind of a filler topic because both of the armies on the morning of August 30th essentially spend the morning in a timeout. A hiatus develops on the battleground. Both armies are using wishful thinking. Robert E. Lee and the Confederate Army of Northern Virginia is hoping that John Pope and the Union guys will continue to attack them. The battle had gone pretty well for Lee and his guys up to that point in time. Union efforts against Confederate positions in the cuts and fills of the unfinished railroad grade. Now the Union Army, John Pope and his guys, their wishful thinking is that the Confederates are going to finally leave. Then he can claim a victory, right? Pope, from his command post on the elevation found to the north of the Stone House, if you head back towards the main intersection in the park, it's called Buck Hill, found directly behind the Stone House. Some of his staff officers say that he spends the morning sort of twiddling thumbs beneath a tree, waiting for the Confederates to leave. Or he seemed to be dealing with some form of contradictory evidence found inside his mind. Others have more disdain for their boss, and they say that his preconceived ideas had already decided him. Well, in that morning, he was getting different forms of information, intelligence, so-called. Some is telling him what he hopes to hear. The Confederates are fleeing and leaving the area. Richard Herron Anderson's division of Longstreet's wing of the Army were the last to arrive on the field. They'd come forward the night of August 29 into the 30th. They proceeded eastbound on the Warrenton Turnpike right into the gore and the mess left of that twilight clash between John Bell Hood and John Hatch. They just sort of dropped their knapsacks and went into camp and bivouac, even with the wounded and the dead around them. It's not until the following morning that they came to recognize that perhaps they're too far in front, as the sun's starting to rise over Dogan Ridge and they're getting these silhouette illuminations, or the silhouette black formations of the Confederate big guns over there. So Richard Herron Anderson's guys pick up their bags and proceed westbound on the roadway. This news makes it back to Pope. The Confederates are leaving the area, right? Never mind other contradictory evidence, where some of the other Union units making feints or efforts again towards the railway grade find the snap and the whiz and the whistle of Confederate lead still flying towards them. Some of these guys are thinking, nope, they're not leaving. They haven't quit yet at all. But Fitz John Porter's guys, the relatively static piece on the Union chessboard, found on the well to the south and west of us outside of the park. Early that morning, they are ordered to get over here towards the battlefield. Sort of a veiled insult in that language. Not where you are, where we are. Never mind Longstreet, the human roadblock found in his path, his inability to make it up here towards the Bronner Farm on the 29th. So Porter's guys, they make a hike, sort of westbound towards the Sudley Road, then northbound on Sudley Road, and they start to arrive on the primary battlefield in the late morning hours. They set up camp atop Dogan Ridge. The Union Army formation is like a herd of buffalo or a giant amoeba on the map. If you look at the unit position maps for, throughout the fight, there's blue boxes and rectangles all over each other. Perhaps not the best Army positioning in the course of, an action with Robert E. Lee. But in the noon time period, Pope is going to make some effort this day. And he's again launching this effort under the false conclusion that the Confederates were fleeing and leaving the area. Fitz John Porter, his 5th Corps of the Army of the Potomac, they're going to be the primary tool for the job. You could view this decision a couple of ways. One, his guys haven't been used on the previous day, so they're relatively fresh, right? Maybe he's given Porter a second chance to prove himself. Or perhaps this is punishment for his supposed insubordination. Pope was ready to cashier and court-martial the guy on the 29th. Here on the 30th, he sort of gets a stay of execution, and Pope is going to give him the chance for this effort here. This 5th Corps, the 2 divisions, George Morrell and George Sykes. Morrell is not going to be personally in charge of his guys, though, for this effort, incapacitated with illness. Instead, it will be Daniel Butterfield, citizen soldier of New York, born in Utica, does not go to West Point, but courtesy of his stout service in the Civil War and continuing to serve in the U.S. Army afterwards, by special dispensation of Congress, he is going to be allowed to be buried at West Point. Just about everyone else in that cemetery graduated from there or taught there. Okay. So Butterfield is going to be in charge of George Morrell's division. George Sykes' guys are primarily United States regulars. Morrell's division is a healthy collection of guys from the Empire State. But where's my 83rd Pennsylvania advocate? There is a sprinkling of guys from some other states. But those guys, where were they from? What part of the Keystone?
Northwestern Pennsylvania.
Yeah, they're from the Keystone of the Keystone. They're from Erie. So maybe they might as well be New Yorkers. Just having fun. There are some guys from some of the M states as well. A few units from Maine, including the 2nd that Buster Kilrain and Gettysburg will tell you about, the Mutineers. They're in the trees over here. And a few units from Massachusetts and a few guys from Michigan. All right. But again, a healthy collection of New Yorkers over here. Porter's Corps is going to be supported by the division of John Hatch, previously Rufus Kings, the guys who started the fight over there at Bronner Farm on the 28th. Beyond the guys from Wisconsin and Indiana, just about the whole rest of that division is also New Yorkers. All right, so you can almost name an integer between 1 and 100, and you got about a 50-50 chance that these New York units are over here in these trees. The brigade leaders are a bunch of lesser knowns. It's going to be Colonel Henry Weeks, Colonel Charles Roberts, and Colonel John Sullivan in the front line. Who, and who? None of these guys are going to make the next step up to Brigadier General. Perhaps an indictment of their battlefield leadership capacities. And in fact, this effort here by Weeks' brigade, this is going to be his first and last job in that echelon of the command structure. So Hatch's guys were positioned in the trees eventually on the right side of Porter's Corps, kind of a little bit beyond our cars and on the opposite side of the roadway. Porter's guys are arriving, filtering into what was called Groveton Woods at the time. The trees on the opposite side of the road, that is appropriate. You have to sort of imagine the forest extending almost all the way southbound towards the Groveton Crossroad intersection. So it's going to be Butterfield's guys in the trees here. Sykes's guys are in reserve. The regulars are actually not going to take part in the push. They saw how suicidal it was going to be for the front rank. Right. As I sweep my arms looking this way, we get very similar view shed for what the soldiers saw when they were here. Trees again on the opposite side of what was called the Groveton-Sudley Road. Today, sort of a bitter irony, a name of Featherbed Lane. Just beyond the parking lot, it turns into a gravel road, which gets rutted like a washboard. It's hardly a feather bed. But Groveton and Sudley, they were the names of crossroad villages found on opposite ends of this period thoroughfare. There were open fields on this side, owned by a widow, Lucinda Dogan. She lived in a pretty grandiose home, found perhaps in these modern trees, which burned in 1860. And at the time of the fight here, she's living in the two-room wood shack down at the intersection, which has come to be labeled the Lucinda Dogan House. There was also a period schoolhouse somewhere nearby, right where we're standing, to teach all the little childrens of the Groveton vicinity. Trees were found on our side of the road, a bit beyond the cars, so that's fairly appropriate. But open fields, again, towards the west. These trees to the south of us, you have to use your imagination and clear them away, all the way southbound towards today's Lee Highway. The Civil War Trust, as many of you are aware, have recently acquired this northern third of the Stonewall Memory Gardens cemetery property. This forest right here may come down in the next few years, and it may be added into the park. That's a wonderful piece of the jigsaw puzzle to complete the picture here. If you look at the park map, it's largely green, but there are white inholders found inside. Here's a very significant piece that we're happy to likely achieve. Please. Okay, so that's the Union players involved, the guys in the trees that are going to make the sweep through this open field. Who are they going towards? Who are they going to push or punch? Again, the Stonewall Division, under the leadership of a guy named William Stark, who just inherited it after the wounding of his predecessor over there at Bronner Farm on the 28th. The Union effort, this pursuit, pushing this part of the railway grade, you could view this decision two ways as well. The previous efforts on the 29th were tried at other stretches of Stonewall Jackson's positions. So maybe the positive perspective on why they're trying here is failed over there, not so successful over there, failed over there. Why not try over here? Or the sort of contrarian perspective to the storyline. Those guys are bloodied and a little used up, bloodied and a little used up. Over here, the Confederate defenders are relatively fresh. Which way is going to work best? I don't know. This Union tactical movement is going to be a gigantic right wheel. The guys over there, Hatch's division, they're going to be the anchoring point of the wheel, and everyone else stretching 300 yards southbound from us, they're going to hoof it through these open fields. Which way would you rather have it? Would you like to be the guys standing still while the bullets are flying?
Yeah.
Or would you like to be the guys hoofing it and exercising while the bullets are flying?
Pivot.
You'd like to be the pivot? Well, either way, it sucks. All right. The first guys out of the trees are the skirmish line, largely composed of the 1st United States sharpshooters, Hiram Berdan's guys. Those wearing the dark green. All right. And when they hurdled the fence line, like what we have reconstructed along the tree line here, one guy said that it was a perfect shower of bullets coming towards us like hailstones. The first things out of their mouth had to be, shh, they're not leaving. They make a hustling dash towards a stream bed found in the middle of the field, which goes by the term of Schoolhouse Branch because of that schoolhouse which was found nearby. Our next pausing point in the course of the hike is going to be that cedar pole monument. You can already make it out from here. A white wooden board atop of a cedar pole found in the middle of the field. A particular member of Hiram Berdan's unit came on back here in the 1880s to mark this spot of dirt in Lucinda Dogan's fields, where he lives through this effort in order to have that lengthier Army career. Any questions at all about what's been covered thus far?
Who was Stark's predecessor?
William Tolliver over there at Bronner Farm.
Repeat the question, please.
She was wondering who Stark's predecessor was.
Okay.
It's William Booth Tolliver, but he was wounded over there at Bronner Farm the evening of August 28. We will delineate some of the various brigades of the Confederate position when we're up there ourselves at the railway grade. We're going to be making that stiff hike up the elevation. We'll see that brownstone obelisk. We'll see the deep cut of the railway found right behind it. We'll also discuss the feature found to the northeast of it, referred to as the dump. Mine over there managing that show. We're going to wrap up our experience together up there at the cut of the railway itself. We're not going to have 90 minutes worth to make it all the way over there to the Confederate artillery position, but if you're inclined, I'll let you go. You can mingle with the cannoneers and get their perspective on the action. Okay. Again, the skirmish line, the Union guys first out of the trees. Hiram Berdan's United States sharpshooters. Also a couple companies of the 25th New York and also the 44th New York. These are the guys that are wearing green, sort of a baby step towards camouflage. Quite often they hide up in the tree tops, pick off Confederate officers from those elevated spots. Here at this wet weather stream bed found in the middle of the field, again going by a name of Schoolhouse Branch, we find a reminder about one of these said sharpshooters. A guy named George Albee, a member of the Wisconsin Company of the U.S. Sharpshooters. Unlike other Civil War units, where you got 10 companies, all from one state, Hiram Berdan's guys, 10 different companies, one from each state. Many of the guys are hand-picked or cherry-picked from all the different state units for their stout performance on the parade grounds, the target practice. They had to prove themselves in order to enter this unit, this quasi-regular Army unit. And for their great talents in the Army, they also got a little bit of rations, a little bit of resupply when things ran out. Their weaponry also, many of them are going to have telescopic sights. Okay, and they had to constantly prove themselves to be members of the unit. If your marksmanship falls off, you're punted back into the state volunteer units, okay? But George Albee, a member of the Wisconsin Company of Hiram Berdan's sharpshooters, comes on back here in the 1880s. Because of his great talents, he continued to serve in the U.S. Army after the Civil War. He actually gets the Medal of Honor out on the Great Plains in a fracas with Native Americans. But in the 1880s, when he's done serving the country, he comes on back here. Lucinda Dogan is still alive, still kicking. He asks for the permission to raise a cedar pole in the middle of the field to mark his spot of dirt, where he lives through this, perhaps most horrific day in his Army career, in order to have that lengthier career. Pretty simplistic monument. Again, most of them are big, grandiose affairs. Veterans of a unit pool their resources, create something big and impressive. A low-budget production by a single individual. This is not the original one. I've been told that this board is the 5th or the 6th generation. Just like Lucinda Dogan did, respecting the guy's wishes, she and her descendants repeatedly re-erected a cedar pole monument with the same sign in the middle of the field, and we've done the same thing since this has become part of the park. The original board is found in the Parks Museum collections back at the Visitor Center, but you're going to have to beg Burgess awful hard in order to see it. All right. The sign, the text, very simple in nature. All he says is, used many cartridges here. And in the company, they lost 1 man killed and 8 wounded. As you know, a company on paper has 100 guys. At this point in the war, they're not that lucky. If you had 9 lost out of 100, that's a 9% casualty rate, and by modern military standards, that's a massacre. All right? So even though his guys are fairly well sheltered in this wet weather stream bed for much of the action, not being involved in the push and grappling with Confederates in a hand-to-hand fight, his company loses 9. All right? Their job after making the dash from the woods to the stream bed are to use their excellent marksmanship and their telescopic sights and pick off any Confederate head or torso that dares to expose itself above the elevations over there, prepping the way for the massed infantry coming in behind them. Some of them fondly recalled how the Confederates sort of initially thought that this wasn't anyone different or special over here in the Union skirmish line, and a lot of them, sure enough, did expose themselves. But after only a short period of time, they came to recognize that there were more than smoothbores over here. All right. Now, once the massed waves of infantry proceed slightly beyond the skirmish line, of course, quite briefly, Albee and the rest of his guys have to hold their fire, not wanting to shoot into the backs of friends. But courtesy of the elevation, that Butterfield's division and Hatch's guys a little further towards the right are having to climb up, that hilltop found directly in front of them, Albee and the guys are shooting again. They're whistling projectiles above the heads of friends to hit the heads of foes found up there. Now, this Union push, this giant right grand wheel, this is a difficult maneuver to perform on the parade grounds under a practice scenario. Here they are in the chaos, the havoc, the carnage, the confusion of a battlefield. And also, Hatch's guys hadn't worked with Butterfield's guys before. All right? So there's going to be a lot of herky-jerky motions and movements, and at times certain regiments are going to sort of present their flank to some of the Confederates, and they're going to get enfilade fire right along their lines. But they're wanting to hustle and sweep through this open field because of the big guns that were booming and barking at them as well. This effort is going to be launched close enough towards the hinge, the connection point of the 2 wings of the Confederate Army, for Longstreet's guys to also play a role. Specifically, Stephen Lee's Reserve Artillery Battalion, Lindsay Shoemaker with the other Jackson's Reserve Artillery, and 4 other guns are also going to set up shop on what's called Battery Heights. If and when these trees are removed, we might have a fair line of sight towards that elevation. When they set up on that perch over there, as the Union guys complete their wheel, now those big guns are firing in the rear. All right. 40 big guns, a crescent moon formation over there on the elevations found to the west of us, are going to make this place artillery hell for the Union infantry. All right. Perhaps John will boom and bark again. I was hoping for the dramatic kaboom right there. So again, the Union infantry, they're not interested in pausing, staying still here too long, because if they do, then they're stationary targets for the big guns that are firing at them from over there. Okay. So without further ado, we're going to replicate this big Union push towards the elevation. We'll make a pause at the base of the hill before we then proceed all the way up like they did.
Or is what they have.
When the first wave fails to punch through Jackson's lines, Porter will follow the ancient military maxim of never reinforce failure. There is Union artillery support for the attack, but it's found on Dogan Ridge, which is too far east to do much good. The Confederates, again, fairly well sheltered in the deep cut and behind the dump. So the Union artillery is not able to have much impact on them. They also sort of have indecision about where to shoot and who to shoot at. Sometimes they're shooting at the Confederate infantry. Other times they're trying to hit that further distant Confederate amassment of the big guns over there. For these Union guys, it's a sad tale about sort of leaving the support of their own guns, getting closer to the Confederate guns. This is again one of the rare occasions where the Confederate artillery are able to turn the tables on their Union equivalents. Usually they were outgunned by the Union big guns.
Good timing. That's good. Apropos.
Excellent.
Do you have any idea how many people here?
Again, Porter has about 10,000 guys in the trees, but only 6,000 or 8,000 are leaving them.
About 120 in the group here. How about how many?
Oh, in my group?
Yeah.
6,000 or 8,000?
The way we're strung out, I think we're brigade with you. Nice, just the way we're strung out.
Yeah.
Small battalion.
Well,
1861 company.
we're not trying to maintain any sort of unit cohesion or front or facing anything. These guys had done a lot of practice in this. They, been on a couple fights before. But if you have a few hours worth of experience over the course of a year and a half's worth of Civil War at this point, even you might not be fully prepared for the drama that's coming in your face in this fight here. I pause here kind of at the base of the elevation for you to gain a perspective or a sense about it. From a distance, it didn't look too intimidating, but here we are now at the base of the hill. This is the equivalent of climbing a 3 or a 4-story building. All right? Now, granted, most of the soldiers are young and they're lean and mean, but they're all doing this carrying about 30 pounds of stuff. Some of you might have the camera sack or the backpack like me, but not 30 pounds worth. Unless it's around the midsection, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Got that right. Don't need any
Now
straps.
again, the Union guys, they don't want to stay here at the base of the hill because then they're a stationary target for the big guns lobbing the iron towards their flanks. But when you climb this elevation, you're going to be gassed. You're going to be fatigued and winded a little bit. And the Confederate infantry found about 30 yards beyond that obelisk, they're given the 20 or 30 seconds necessary to reload and get ready for you, right? So if you've survived to this point here in the attack, you then have to climb this stiff elevation and get one more volley in your face at point blank range. And if you survive that, it's your job to close the distance with the foe and extract them from their pretty strong position. All right? We're going to make the hike like they did. Here, more appropriately, also sort of clear out the perspective from here towards Bronner's Farm to better replicate the clear line of fire that the Confederate big guns had from over there.
It gives you a much better view of what it was. That's really deep there, isn't it?
Yeah.
Great job.
I understand hindsight is 20/20, of course, but given what we know now, what was Porter's best move that day?
Stay where he was.
Yes, sir.
Being nicer to Pope. Having someone else try this. This is sort of a forlorn hope. Again, hindsight 20/20, but even his guys came to recognize when his guys are in the trees, they were already getting punched and harassed by SD Lee and the big guns over there. They'd already set up shop on those elevations. Some other readings or accounts about the battle, over dramatize things, talk about the guns hastily deploying into position just as the Union guys are stretching their legs out of the trees. Not the case. SD Lee, no relation to the Army leader, Robert E. Lee. He was a Mississippian. He's set up there already in the morning of August 30th. And Robert E. Lee, perhaps with the fortuitous foresight, says, stay where you are. You are where I want you. And then sure enough, when the Union guys are scrambling out of the trees, they're in the perfect spot. Okay. Some of the Confederate guns are rifled iron pieces. They have the effective range of 1.25 miles, so they're already harassing the guys in blue in the trees when they're in the trees. A lot of Porter's guys are just hoping that the clock disappears and the day's done. The other guns are bronze, smoothbore pieces. They don't have the same range. They can't reach them when they're in the woods, but as they make this massive sweep into the fields closer towards the Confederate muzzles, those smoothbore pieces are adding their weight into the equation as well. Now, despite all the obstacles to the Union advance, harassing infantry fire from well-sheltered Confederates in front of them, and the iron coming on their flank, it is important to recall that most of them make it up here. The guys doing the shooting are getting shot at. They're anything but calm. They're nervous as can be. The guns, they're going through the variety of steps to load and shoot them. They might be shooting at the clouds. Albie and the sharpshooters are in that dry stream bed. They're making it difficult for any sort of Confederate to come on forward and slowly pick out a target. But again, this is a pretty good spot to be. The Confederates are not taking too many hits, but again, a lot of the Union guys are also making it up here. This is the so-called deep cut of the unfinished railroad directly behind us. Why does it exist at all? Perhaps you got some of this story with the 29th attack talks. But the Manassas Gap Railway was one of the two that converged in downtown Manassas and made it a rail junction. Well, their tracks terminated there. They had to pay the Orange and Alexandria Railroad for the use of their locomotives, their rolling stock, in order to get people and freight all the way towards Alexandria and the national capital. An exorbitant fee. In order to avoid the expense, they were going through the engineering work of laying their own route out through Prince William County, across Bull Run into Fairfax County. So this unfinished railroad grade was under construction in the mid-1850s, but they ran out of money partway through the job. Financial recession in 1857, they'd leveled all the dirt necessary so locomotives didn't have to go up or down steep hills or make sharp turns, but they never put down ties and rails and put it into operation. Here we are 5 years later in the midst of Civil War, and by this second summer, the soldiers of both sides were starting to get smart. It's a good idea to have dirt between us and the foe. They're not yet in love with the spade or the shovel. They're not going to willingly get blisters, break their backs anytime they stop for lunch. They'll get over that bad habit by the time we get to the wilderness in Spotsylvania, right? Right. But at this point in the war, when they find things like this, they're going to take advantage of them. And sure enough, Jackson and his guys are going to use about 2.5 miles worth of this thing. Now, not every Confederate is going to find a very convenient man-made V cut into the ground, or a man-made linear pyramidal formation like the dump that we're going to head towards here shortly. Some stretches of this railway grade, the engineers didn't have to do too much engineering work. Like if I wanted to lay a railroad out from myself to you guys in the back of the crowd, this dirt right here is relatively level. I don't have to do any engineering work. So on some stretches of this 2.5 miles, some of the Confederates are sort of standing out in the open. They can look towards their buddies to the left and to the right and say, we're in the tough spot here. So who's in the cut? It's Bradley Johnson's brigade of Virginians. He is a Marylander, but there aren't terribly many Maryland units in the Confederate Army. It took him a little while to achieve a brigadier general's commission and the leadership of a brigade. He doesn't have too many Maryland politicians down in Richmond chirping for his benefit. But he's given these guys, they're Virginians, largely from the southwestern part of the state. We're talking about Roanoke, Wytheville, Abingdon, those parts. Specifically, the 42nd Virginia is going to be found literally in the deep cut. You have to imagine these hundreds of guys laying on this side of the man-made V. Their rifles are pointed over the top at about our knee or hip level. And from where they are, if you cut down slightly this grass here, they're going to have a clear line of sight, a bead on where we were earlier from a relatively sheltered spot. The guys occupying the dump just a bit towards their north and east, brigade of Louisianans, Leroy Stafford's guys. Some of these had been with Jackson out in the Shenandoah Valley earlier in 1862. Some of them under the leadership of Richard Taylor in that fight. Here in this fight, they're under this guy Leroy Stafford, who's going to serve them capably for much of the rest of the war before he meets his end down in Spotsylvania County. We're going to go head towards their position, and we'll talk about how close these two sides get to each other, and how indeed this Union effort, despite all the obstacles, is going to nearly crack Jackson's line in this vainglorious pursuit of his non-retreating forces. All right?
Would mortars have been more helpful on the Union side?
You're saying mortar?
Mortars instead of cannons.
Yeah, if they had them, they perhaps could have lost shells into the... Sort of visualize where the unnamed as the dump, because the railroad engineers in the 1850s, in the course of creating the deep cut, found a whole lot of boulders and rocks, and they just sort of dumped them over here to create this embankment or berm. There was going to be a slight trestle-work bridge over the stream, which is found in the trees just beyond where it passes out of our line of sight. Whereas Bradley Johnson and some of the Virginians are found in the cut, over here we've got Leroy Stafford and the Louisianans. They're on this side of the man-made pyramid. Now, some of the New Yorkers moving on towards them, specifically the 24th and the 30th Infantries, some of them actually make it towards the opposite side of the linear pyramid. Sort of stalemate scenario ensues. But one particular officer in the 30th New York, Major Andrew Jackson Barney, rides into the fight on horseback. His valor sort of surprised and awed the Confederate defenders. The fact that he survived, these are the guys doing the baby steps. They're the anchor of the wheel. So they're sort of targets for a long time before they make it over here towards the Confederate position. He and his horse survived all the way towards the embankment. Some of the Louisianans said, "Don't shoot him, don't shoot him." Well, other ones decided to shoot. A couple rounds enter his head. He goes down right onto the top of this dump. His horse, now riderless, just sort of prances over the top and enters Confederate service. Major Barney's corpse is going to be brought on over into the Confederate position. Some Confederate risking his own tail to go to the top to retrieve this body of a Union officer and bring him down into their care and custodianship. Now, some of the Louisianans had run out of ammunition in the course of firing their rounds towards these slow-moving Union soldiers walking on towards them, and they weren't too sure about what to do at that point. Resupply? When's it coming? When are we getting the rounds? The story goes that a big burly Irishman in one of the units from New Orleans, the largest city of the Confederacy with some ethnic diversity, guy by the name of O'Keefe, says, "Boys, give them rocks." And they start proceeding to pick up any stone they can, those the size of their skulls or their fists, and heaving them over the top onto the Union soldiers found clustered on the other side. One guy from New York, Theron Haight, who survives the ordeal in order to write about it, for us to read about it, half humorously wrote later on that this was an unlooked-for variation in the proceedings. Huge stones started to fall around us, some with very unpleasant effect. For us, it reads like a humorous story, like kindergartners having a food fight in a cafeteria. But for these guys, it's, horrifying and terrifying in the extreme. And in fact, for one soldier from New York, it's not such a funny story. He actually had his skull cracked in by one of these fallen rocks. His friends probably had to write a letter back to a widow, a new widow, or a mother back home. And what an odd way for your son or husband to die on a battlefield with a stone hitting him in the head. However long the rock fight lasted, it grew like a fisherman's tale after the Civil War. Quite a few guys claimed that they were participants in it. It probably lasted for 10 or 15 minutes worth of time. It's hard to say how many guys are literally involved, but it serves as a colorful story to highlight the severity of fighting, how close they get to each other, and how the animal nature of man is unleashed in battle. Sure enough, the Louisianans do get ammunition resupply, and they revert back to loading muskets, holding them above their heads, and cocking the trigger as best they can to try to fire that lead object at whatever angle they think will work best to hit the other guys on the opposite side. Now, this is Timothy Sullivan's brigade of John Hatch's division, a supporting brigade of Marsena Patrick, later to be the provost marshal of the entire Army of the Potomac, the chief of police. He will send some of his New Yorkers forward to sort of divert attention from the harrowing experience for the 24th and the 30th. One particular unit, the 20th New York State Militia, aka the 80th New York, will sort of misdirect their efforts, and they'll be off there in the trees, and a lot of Confederate fire will be united upon them. Isaac Ridgway Trimble's brigade, in charge of a captain at this point in time. Imagine that. The brigadier general, every single colonel, every single lieutenant colonel, and every single major has already been killed or wounded on the 28th and the 29th. This guy, Captain Brown, leading Trimble's brigade into the fight. Alabamians, Carolinians, Georgians, they're able to unite their fire against these 20th New York State militiamen. And they're going to lose 6 guys carrying their colors in the course of the fight. Many of them get wrapped up in its folds in the course of falling on down. So that's the stalemate scenario that ensued over here. It almost takes me as long to tell the story as what ensues over here. The Union guys stepped out of the trees at about 3 o'clock, and they're retreating, and the whole drama will be over by 3:45. Okay.
How many of those, is that tree line too far, too close?
It's probably a bit larger than it was for them. Some of you are aware, about 4 years ago, we cleared out a fair number of acres of trees in our vicinity. Previously, the trail route that we used from the road to the monument was only a slim eye of a needle. You could barely see the monument from the road. We've flushed out the field panorama, which was the prevailing view shed over here. But these trees are growing in that schoolhouse branch stream bottom, and cutting trees that have roots growing in water sources is 10 times harder than cutting trees that already grow in a national park. We're going to backtrack, retrace steps back over there towards the deep cut, the shade around the monument. We will proceed again beyond it, and we'll highlight some of the other Confederate defenders and the close hand action that ensued over there.
The Confederate lines continue that way. There was no way for me to find them.
Right, they continue
line goes
all the way to the bank of Bull Run. Yeah.
You know what the last brigade this way was in the
A brigade over there at the dump. Again, Bradley Johnson's guys, these Virginians in the cut. Quite a few New Yorkers are crawling over the embankment like we had, and they actually make it to the position. Ever so briefly, the butts of muskets, the bayonets are employed against each other, but the Union guys run out of any sort of punch and power. They also noticed that the secondary reserve line of Confederates found in the trees 200 yards beyond the cut are coming on forward to meet them. It would be kind of like, a head-on collision at an intersection. These Union guys recognize that they've lost any potential for success, and they sort of scramble backwards, taking advantage of any rock, any stump. Many of them just sort of go off the little shoulder of the elevation that we just climbed up. And a sort of point-blank range firefight ensues about 30 or 50 yards away from each other. Both sides fairly well sheltered, not too many guys getting hit. All right. This sort of close-range infantry action ensued over almost a quarter mile's worth of the front. The guys in the reserve, none other than the famous Stonewall Brigade again. But again, used at Bronner Farm, whittled down to about 460 fellows, fresh, healthy in the ranks after that fight. Here they are, ordered forward to punch back the Union effort. A sort of gap or Union penetration started to occur where this deep cut terminates, and as you can tell, the railway grade does not have too much engineering work. Alexander Tolliver's brigade, Virginians and Alabamians, are maintaining the position over there. You see how the trees sort of extend a little bit southbound beyond the trail route. That is appropriate. There was a bit of a thicket found on the Confederate facing front that the Union attackers are coming through, and that certainly eased the Union efforts to reach the Confederate position right there. When the Stonewall Brigade is coming on forward, they're under the leadership of a guy named Colonel William Baylor, 31 years old, Commonwealth's attorney for the state of Virginia in Stanton out in the Shenandoah Valley. I'm 35, guy's 31. Woo, doing better than me. Gotta get off the treadmill. His stuff is over at the visitor center. He's going to meet his end in the course of this countercharge, this push here. His dress epaulets, his dress sword, his service sword, the portraits of him, his wife, some of his kids, brand new acquisitions by the park. Descendants of him out in Missouri have decided to relinquish it and make you guys the owners of it. All right.
What's his name again?
Colonel William Baylor. Previously of the 5th Virginia, now in charge of the entire Stonewall Brigade. Some of them are a little hesitant to make the effort through the open grass towards these Union guys on up here. But he grabs the flag of the 33rd Virginia, and just like so many fellows grabbing the flag of the 20th New York State Militia fall in its folds, he will fall in the folds of the 33rd Virginia flag before making it on over here towards the cut. Successor leaders of the brigade do come on forward and push the Union guys away from the grade, but they send back messengers to their previous boss, Stonewall Jackson, asking for help. A sort of poignant moment occurs when, in the din, the chaos of the battle, Stonewall Jackson will say, with hand cupped around the ear, who needs help? Who needs reinforcements? and the staff officers will say, the Stonewall Brigade. And Jackson will say, tell the Stonewall Brigade to maintain their reputation. But even Jackson came to recognize that reputations are not going to win the fight. He does ask for help. He asks for a brigade from A.P. Hill, who's not being tested here on the 30th. All his guys tested on the 29th. He also asks for help from Longstreet. He's hoping for an entire division from the other wing of the Army. This is a rare concession by Jackson about how serious this Union push is. Jackson doesn't often ask for help. Here he's asking for help from both sides of him. Longstreet correctly deduced that it would have taken too long for infantry to walk on the outside edge of the circle to make it all the way over here to have any sort of impact on the fight. So he does send the Dixie artillery under William Chapman to that elevation termed Battery Heights. And again, they're going to do a great job of firing iron into the rear of the Union fellows who are found on the opposite side of the elevation here. Pinned down, not wanting to climb to the top for the hostile infantry fire from in front. Also getting the iron on the flank. Now they're starting to get iron in the rear. Okay. Now, after about 15, maybe 20 minutes worth of time up here, orders are filtering through Union officers that, guys, it's time to survive a retreat. They also looked behind them and saw that the intended second wave, meant to exploit any success gained by them, the front wave, ain't leaving the safety of the trees. Again, Porter not wanting to reinforce failure, George Sykes' division of regulars is staying back there in the trees. Well, some of these New Yorkers, and those few Pennsylvanians, and those guys from Massachusetts and Michigan, this is a bitter choice, and they're going to be bitter in their writings about it afterwards. One guy will say, we left our dead and wounded to hold the ground. And then it's almost every man for himself. Like any retreat, it's made faster, less organized than the advance. And they're getting fire in the rear the whole length of the way. There's no such romantic notion about foes not shooting into the backs of foes. Both sides relished these opportunities. So S.D. Lee and the big guns are booming and barking in anger again in the whole course of their hike back towards the relative safety of the trees. Now, for S.D. Lee over there, some of his guys were celebrating a little too much. He kept them focused at the task at hand by saying less hallooing and more firing. Also, Captain Parker of Parker's Battery over there, one innocent cannoneer of one of the pieces, very enthusiastically tells the battery leader, the Yanks are retreating, let us celebrate. And Captain Parker will say, let us give them some more shot first. So they're getting it the whole length of the retreat. Now, the biggest Union attack of the battle, half hour, 45 minutes after it began, has just become the biggest failure of the battle. And some of the Union officers throughout the whole fight here are also battling the demons of the past. And some of them are fearing that there's another Bull Run now on their hands. Another panic-stricken mob that might engulf the entire army, sweep it eastbound, and who knows if it'll stop. Among them thinking this way was Irvin McDowell, the army leader here in the first fight, the author of the first disaster. He certainly does not want another Bull Run stampede on his resume. Of his own volition or initiative, he ordered a lot of his guys northbound from previous spots on the military chessboard found on the opposite side of the Warrenton Turnpike. He orders those guys northbound to arrest their fleeing friends. Never mind that Sykes' regulars, Sigel's entire corps, George Dashiell Bayard's brigade of cavalry are all already over there able to do such. Irvin McDowell orders the Pennsylvania Reserves under John Reynolds northbound to do the same thing. The action, well-intentioned as it was, couldn't have been worse timed, because he created a near military vacuum on the south side of the roadway at the same time as the Confederates are going to choose to counterattack. Lee is going to build on what's just happened here. He recognized that the scales have entirely tipped into his favor, and what's already shaped up to be a win, he's going to hope to make an annihilative victory. He wants his army to kill or capture every Union soldier who is here. And James Longstreet's wing of the army is going to finally get actively engaged. About 28,000 guys occupying a 2-mile wide battlefront are going to try to sweep through 3 miles of ground and achieve the Henry Hill Plateau before the sun goes down. In all of those dimensions, Longstreet's attack or assault here at 2nd Manassas is twice as big as Pickett's famous charge at, what's that battle? Oh yeah, Gettysburg. Initially, there are 2,200 Union soldiers in front of them. You don't have to be a military genius. You don't have to go to West Point to have a good chance for success. All right? But you're going to learn at 4 o'clock, if you take that hike from New York Avenue towards Chin Ridge, about how these 2,200 Union soldiers are going to selflessly sacrifice themselves for the rest of their Army's benefit. It was a story of both sides fighting for time, and Union soldiers were willing to lose friends and relatives to gain 10, 15, who knows how many minutes worth of time. The concluding tour this evening at 7 p.m. at the Henry Hill Plateau will also be sort of the climactic, final shots of the battle waged right where the chaos of battle, the eye of the man-made storm was in the first fight. The twin brownstone obelisk for the Union dead of the first battle is found right there in the backyard of the Henry House. Since this deep cut of the railway grade right here was the focal point of the biggest Union effort of the second battle, it became the focal point for a commemorative event shortly after the conclusion of the war. Here is the twin to the more frequently visited one found at Henry Hill, a brownstone obelisk built on an earthen pedestal, built by Union soldiers in the spring of 1865. This one also had artillery projectiles ornamenting it. Perhaps you've seen the earlier images of it, but those were seized off by local civilians in the post-war years for alternate uses. This one's a little further off the beaten path, even today in 21st century America. So there wasn't too much of a police presence out here. Maybe they needed some paperweights, I'm not sure. But the text upon it, pretty simple in nature, just like the one found on Henry Hill. This thing simply says, "In memory of the patriots who fell at Groveton." Well, what's Groveton? These whole few days we've been talking about 2nd Manassas or 2nd Bull Run. Groveton is again the name of the crossroads village where this little period lane intersects with today's Lee Highway, back then Warrenton Turnpike. Lucinda Dogan's little 2-room wood house is the only surviving wartime building, but at the time of the fights here, there was a cluster of families living around that intersection. It became a ghost town after the Civil War as traffic diverted off the Warrenton Turnpike and increasingly onto the nearby railroads. But for some of the guys out here in 1862, also 1865 when they're building this, this action here is the Battle of Groveton, because that's the nearby village. Some of these Union guys never went into downtown Manassas, and they don't see Bull Run until they're retreating across it in the dark hours of this night, August 30th of 1862. All right. That's the story of what ensued here. Again, takes me far longer to tell it than what actually happened, but you have to recall or remember that this is a human drama involving about 6,000 or 8,000 Union guys wheeling towards us as we had 3,500 or 4,000 Confederate defenders found in this railway grade doing their darndest to beat back this effort. Jackson asking for help turns out to not be necessary. Porter holding back the whole reserve division. A forlorn hope, a pursuit that doesn't even have to be launched. The Confederates more than willing to stay where they are, and after this failure they turn the tables on their Union equivalents and nearly achieve a battle as dramatic in victory as what happened here in the first summer of the war. Without further ado, I'll free you up if you're interested in walking along the railway grade and heading towards the artillerymen there that have added a bit to our experience. You can thank them for their efforts. You can walk along the grade where the Union guys push through and the Stonewall Brigade comes to plug them away from the hole. There is a separate trail route that'll take you all the way back to the cars, following right along in the bottom, along the tree line there. Or like most of us, we can take the shortcut, right? And replicate the primary Union retreat off this elevation back towards the relative safety of the vehicles. Thanks for coming. Questions at all, I'll be happy to linger and answer them here, at least for the few more hours, okay?
Can I get that mic off you?
It's about a half mile one way.
Did you hear the numbers? How many people here? Did that tell you?